Hi, this is your mini lecture for Chapter 3 on personality, perception, and attribution. Here are the learning outcomes for this chapter. You may pause here and read them. All right, so first we're going to look at individual differences and explain why they're important in understanding behavior within a business or organization. All right, so obviously all of us are different in different ways. And so this is one of the biggest challenges as a manager, is managing people with different personalities and different skill sets. And so the more managers can understand individual differences, the better they are at working with others. So this concept of interactional psychology is a psychological approach that's used to understand human behavior by knowing something about a person, and their personality as well as the situation. And this can help us to understand individual differences. All right, so when we look at behavior, all right, within specifically an organization or a work environment, there's two aspects that play into that. So one is the person. So these include, what skills and abilities do the people in the workplace have? What is their personality? How do they perceive things? So how do they interpret things? What are their attributions, their attitudes, their values, and their ethics? And as we know, all of these things are different for every one of us in this world. And then what is the environment like? What is the organization? What is the work environment like? What is the group dynamic like? What is their job like? And then that all contributes to a person's behavior, all right? So next we'll look at some key personality traits and how they influence behavior in an organization. All right, so what is personality? Well, it's this relatively stable set of characteristics, or the set of characteristics that we continuously have that influence an individual's behavior and lend to its consistency. All right. So a trait theory says that our behaviors are all because of our personality. All right. Versus the integrative approach, which says that um, it describes personality as a composite of our individual's physiological processes. And so this looks at things not only as just our personality, but also what is the situation at play. All right. So in the trait theory, we're saying, hey, our personality is really primarily what determines our behavior in the workplace. And in the integrative approach, it says, yeah, our personality is a big part of what determines our behavior in the workplace, but there's also situational variables. So depending on the situation and those other factors, that can also play into our behavior. So there are 5 big personality traits that we tend to look at. Extraversion versus introversion. So this is, are we social? Are we outgoing? Are we assertive or are we reserved? Are we more timid? Are we more shy? Are we more quiet? Neither is better than the other. And actually, this concept of extroversion is even more than this. It's more of, where do I get my energy from? So if I'm in a social setting, so if I go to the movies with my friend, does that give me energy? And does that make me, is that where I feel my energy from? Or if I'm at home reading a book, does that give me energy? I am an extrovert personally, so when I go out with my friends, like I went to dinner with my friends last night. If I go out to dinner with my friends, that fuels me and that gives me energy. I have family members who are more introverts. So for them, going out to dinner with their friends is very enjoyable, but they need to then go home and have alone time to really get their energy again. Agreeableness is how cooperative, warm, or agreeable somebody is. Or do they tend to be more aloof or cold or disagreeable or more of an antagonist? Again, we're not saying any of these is better than the other. It's just their characteristics of people. Conscientiousness is that are people hardworking? Are they organized? Are they dependable? Or are they more, I don't even like the word lazy, maybe, again, not so driven? Are they a little bit more disorganized? Are they a little bit more unreliable? What's their emotional stability like? Are they calm, self-confident, or cool? Are they a little bit more insecure? Are they a little bit more anxious? Are they a little bit more depressive? Are they open to new experiences? Are they creative, curious, cultured? Or are they more very pragmatic or practical? Or do they have narrow interests? And all of these, whether you're an extrovert versus an introvert, or agreeable versus disagreeable, or etc., are going to play a big part in how you behave in the workplace. All right, so we know that it's not just personality that impacts our behavior, but also the situational variables. So situations vary in strength. All right, so there are some strong situations that are more overwhelming, or there may be more stressful situations, which may lead to less desirable behavior, which is versus more weak situations, which are open to interpretations. So some personality characteristics that we see in an organization are as follows. One is our locus of control. All right. So one is our beliefs about internal control versus external control. Our general self-efficacy. And this is really just our belief that we're capable of, or 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 we're not capable. Our self-esteem. Do we have a general feeling of self-worth? I mean, we see this in people. Some people are very confident, and some people really question their abilities and their worth. And I want everybody to have good self-esteem because you all are wonderful. All right, self-monitoring. The extent to which an individual bases his or her behaviors on cues from other people. So do we monitor situations? Do we learn from past situations? And then positive or negative affects. So individuals can have either an emphasis to tendency to emphasize the positive aspects of oneself or negative aspects of oneself or other people or the world. And so that is also going to lead to behavior in the workplace. Right. So there's this concept of proactive personalities, and these are people who identify opportunities and act on them. And people who tend to be proactive are more positively related to have good job performance, career success, and job search success. And I think that we see this. Like, if you're like, all right, what are the opportunities out there? I'm going to go search for job opportunities. I'm going to apply for a lot of different jobs. We'll just look at a job search process. If you're more proactive, you're probably going to be more successful. All right, next we're going to discuss how personality theories may be applied in organizations. So let's see how this actually fits within an organization. So there's this concept called the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and it's really just like a personality assessment that helps to determine what your personality type is based on these different 4-scale dichotomies. So it evaluates you on your degree of extroversion versus introversion. And you can see it like I'm doing this, but it's like a scale. Whether you're more sensing or intuitive, whether you're more thinking or feeling, and whether you're more judging or perceiving. And we're actually going to do this as an assignment. And what it actually does is it tells you kind of what your personality might be like in both your personal and your professional life. And so if here's kind of, you can pause it here and read this, but this is, if you're more extroverted, you're going to have these characteristics versus more introverted, you'll have these, and you're somewhere on a continuum. And so you can see this, you can pause here and read these, and you can pause here and read these as well. And what it does is it helps us to understand what we're like in an organization and how we might work well with others, or what personalities we might work well with. And there's other assessments out there. This is a big one. And then there's also one called the Strengths Finder. That's also a big one too. And they kind of do the same thing. All right. So we can use the Myers-Briggs in developing programs to help employees understand different viewpoints of others. We can use it for team building. We can use it to look at how differences and diversity can actually help lead to success. So, for example, I'm somebody who's like, yes, let's go and do this. Like, I'm like all about, I'm called an activator on the Strengths Finder. I actually work really well with somebody who's more contemplative because they stop me and they're like, whoa, 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 Rachel, stop. Let's process and think about this a little bit more before we take action. So while that may drive me crazy some days, I also know it's a good thing for me to work with somebody like that so that we can have the ultimate best result. All right, next we're going to look at social perception and factors that affect that. So social perception is just how we interpret information about another people, how others perceive each other when going through changes or life changes. This is very culturally determined, and so we look at our social perception as what are the characteristics of the person perceiving it, what are the characteristics of our target, and then what are the characteristics of the situation. Impression management is really this process that by which we try to control the impressions others have of us. All right, and this can either be self-enhancing or other-enhancing. And so it's really important that our impressions are conveyed accurately or we start to get into some issues there. So there are 5 common barriers to social perceptions. All right, so one is selective perception. And this is just our tendency to really prefer or hear information that is consistent with our own viewpoints, or even to perceive it in a way that's consistent with our own viewpoints. A stereotype is when we generalize a group of people. We all understand that. And I think we've all been stereotyped in our life. Um, Sometimes we have a first impression error, and we've all done this, and it's all been done to us, where somebody meets us or we meet somebody and we get a first impression and we hold that impression of them, whether it's accurate or not. A projection is that we assume that our own beliefs and values are common among many others, when in fact they probably aren't. And then we overestimate the number of people who share our common values and interests and so forth. And then a self-fulfilling prophecy is that the idea that our expectations affect the way we interact with others, such that we provoke the very response we expect. So if we expect somebody to act a certain way, then that will be, we'll try to get a response that aligns with that. All right. So next, we're going to look at the attribution process and how attributions affect managerial behavior. So the attribution theory explains how individuals pinpoint the causes of their own and others' beliefs. And so this can be the internal source or an external source. And obviously, this varies among other people. So the fundamental attribution error is this tendency of people to think that people behave the way they do because of who they are rather than the situation. All right, so we're saying, oh, that's just who they are. They're behaving this way because it's them, not because a situation or because of what's going on is causing them to behave that way. So we have this self-serving bias is this tendency to attribute our own success to internal causes and our failures to external causes. And so we can say like, oh, I got an A on that exam because I studied really hard versus, oh, I got a D on that exam because the teacher picked really poor questions and it just wasn't a representative exam, right? So do you see how when I got an A, it was because I studied, and when I got a D, it was because of the teacher. So that's a quick overview of Chapter 3. If you have any questions, please contact me. Thanks.